I have a condition called spinal muscular atrophy, and I need attendant care. You know, feeding and washing and dressing, cleaning up. My parents, my family, looked after my attendant care needs until I was 19. But we all felt as a family that I should move away from the family. My parents didn't foresee that they either emotionally or physically could maintain that kind of care for me all my life. There's my grandmother right in the middle of the picture.
Is it?
Yeah, that was 11 years ago. She was only 83 then. She's 94 now.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Look at my father. He looks like he's wearing a toupee. We hired a second-year student when I went into first-year university, and she did my physical care for me. My physical needs were also not that heavy then, but when I graduated from my bachelor's, went into the hospital, had an operation, which didn't go well at all, and I ended up needing much more physical care. These are all these pictures I'm not telling you about are all the men in my life who went and married other women.
Oh, let's go over this again.
I graduated from my master's program, and in April 1976, ended up in Oak Ridge Villa, which is a nursing home. I went from Oak Ridge to West Park and spent a year and a half there. So almost 4 years in an institution.
How long did you stay in that one? That's a good building.
I began to realize that I had to fight to leave or I was going to die. And the more I fought to get what I needed in that place, the more hostile the staff got. So I left. To live another year.
Cindy and I are going to go down. We've done everything so far.
And I began to subsidize my own attendant care. 11 until 7:30, so maybe. One of the people who lives in the building cleans my apartment for me. She comes up about once every week or so and does that.
Okay, so
okay.
Judy. Bye. We'll see you later.
No, you're not supposed to say bye. You're supposed to say goodbye to Judy.
Stay off the kitchen floor for a little while. It's still wet, okay?
All right, well,
bye, love. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye. You're welcome. Bye.
I need approximately 6 hours a day of attendant care. Krista does most of the blocks in my attendant care schedule. There are 5 blocks a day. There's the morning block, which includes getting me out of bed, giving me breakfast, that being 2 hours in the morning, an hour and a half at lunch and supper each. And there's the bedtime where the people put me back in bed. And then there's a sleepover period for the person. The person stays in the apartment with me.
I have to do a lot of running around tomorrow.
You need to be very flexible about where you look for attendants. Nothing is cut and dried about this whole thing. Okay, I'd say a typical attendant is a person who has a varied schedule themselves and who has another source of income and who wants to boost their income by part-time work. So I find, for example, that students are an excellent source of attendance.
Hi.
You must be around Bill.
Yes, I am.
Well, then I'm Judith Snow.
Hi.
I didn't know what Georgia had told you. What did she say to you?
She just said that you needed a driver.
We're looking for a permanent driver attendant. My attendant care is based on my own schedule, my own needs. I myself prefer that people have no previous training. And I think that most people who need attendant care agree with that because we'd like to train the attendants according to our own specific needs and our own specific patterns. So that's probably the days that I'll need somebody. And probably from anywhere between 9 and 12 in the morning till 6 to midnight and somewhere, and that'd be every day it changes. We generally pay $48 a day if the person's doing the attendant care. Yeah. And when Irene comes down, she's the person who sort of explains what it is we're all trying to do.
Yeah.
what it's all about.
Okay, now the principle to lift Judy will be by operating this handle after having checked that the valve is shut.
Right.
You pump with a continuous total action.
If I had to arrange for all the services
Down.
that I need, I would have no time to be anything but handicapped. Coordinator in my attendant care system is very important, because otherwise I would have to spend a lot of time every day making sure that people were going to come when they were supposed to come and that they knew where they were supposed to come. And I'd have to spend a lot of time training.
Now, watch the legs. Both hands behind the feet. Okay? Gently.
I've never found anybody who had professional training who really understood what it meant to use a Hoyer lift or to give a bed bath or wash somebody's hair. They still have to do it all over again.
So that's the bathroom operation.
And
And we can go into a what?
A lecture on what it's all about.
And
You've done that part already.
whilst you're working with Judy in just the attendant capacity, Judy doesn't require you to think as such in the literal sense of the word. She requires your physical hands and feet to do what she can't do for herself.
I think that every human being has potential which is unmet, and the more options they have to meet that, the better. One of the things that I'm able to do is ask almost anybody on the street or in the store or in the bank. I can ask them to hold the door, to push a button, to put my wallet up on the counter, whatever it is, right? Yeah, you just take the money out of the wallet. If I were not able to ask people, then my life would be a lot more restricted than it is. But we tend to teach handicapped people not to ask. We tend to say, you know, you should be independent. We'll give you some technical aids, but don't ever ask anybody for anything. And that makes their life very restricted. You put the wallet in the bag and lay the bag down so the bottle won't break. I'll just lay it down. That's it. Okay. I have feeling in every part of my body, but I only have useful movement in my head and in my thumb. So of course I drive my chair with my thumb. The very basic wheelchair, the frame and the wheels, is a product of an American company that has a Canadian distributor. And the electronics part by which I control the wheelchair is a unique design produced by the Rehabilitation Engineering Department of the Ontario Centre for Crippled Children. And the money for the two comes from the Muscular Dystrophy Association. I have a touch-operated selector control system, which is a box that has 9 channels on it. And into the 9 channels run things like my radio, my telephone, my intercom.
Hello, Janet.
Hi, Janet, it's Judy.
Hi.
Sorry I didn't get back to you earlier. They were cutting a tree down. And I didn't think you'd be able to hear me over the noise. There's a role for technology in making it possible for me to have more options. The selector control system makes it possible for me to be alone in my apartment for significant periods of time, like 2 or 3 hours, because I can dial the phone out and get somebody to come in if I need help. Or more importantly, I think I can do a lot of my work on the phone.
Okay.
For Syracuse. The financial source for my technical needs are usually some charitable organization. The financial source of my attendant care right now is mostly government money. For my own living expenses, I earn all that money. My chosen work at this point is to spend time with groups of people who are trying to support other handicapped people and teaching at York University.
How are the prospects for work? I mean, for speaking engagements at which you can charge a fee? Yes.
Well, ultimately, I think there are many, but that's one of the things for having a paid person to look for them. And Jenny's just said, for example, that there are 2 relatively new rehab counseling programs. There is always a need to think about money and where it's going to come from. There are a large number of people involved in my life. I can get those people together when I need them, and I do need to get them together fairly often in order to look at the next step and see what's coming up and maybe solve a crisis sometimes.
I have a list actually of foundations and granting agencies that I pulled together for something else that I could, they define their fields of interest.
I am proving, and it is important to prove, that systems can be organized around the individual's needs. This attendant care system is organized around my needs as Judith Snow and nobody else. When I was just part of a class of people called physically handicapped, my needs were met very badly and in a very limited sort of way, and yet it was very expensive for everyone.
Setting some kind of precedent by giving to an individual. And
it cost the province of Ontario twice as much to keep me in an institution as it does to keep me in my own apartment.
Nowadays, but their idea was that funding an individual was not something they were in the business of doing. Even though we were trying to, we were presenting it as something broader than just for an individual. We're trying to model a way of supporting a handicapped person, and that this could be replicated with other people, and we had to demonstrate something to the government.
It's going to have such a relevance for you, for all of us, the economic problem.
The idea of the Joshua Committee emerged as a support committee, and Judy tagged it with the name Joshua Committee to signify that we're attempting to break down the walls of bureaucracy and free her to live her life as she desires to live her life.
It's us thinking about what it's going to be like if the current trends that are involved in our society continue. We start to think about what's going to happen as some of the attitudes, some of the funding policies, some of the economic crises or whatever are happening, how that influences and impacts on all of us, but particularly on Judy.
Individuals on the committee undertake specific actions, for example, around seeking government funding or private funding, designing the attendant care system, for example, at the moment. We're moving from a lot of people involved to an attempt to have possibly 3 people involved on a much more full-time basis.
Depending on how long I live, approximately another 1,000 people, okay? I mean, really, it could easily, 1,000 people or more coming into my life.
How could it be better?
It's just not too clear to me what it is that's wrong. This system, the one I have now, requires the commitment on the part of the people in the Joshua Committee. It doesn't require any commitment to put somebody in an institution. It just dumps them. But for me to live here, the Joshua Committee have to want me to be here. They have to be willing to spend the time to work out problems as they come up. And as it happens, they are. I think there always will be people who believe in me and in the presence of other handicapped people in the world. And they're very important to me.
I went back to that place, like I asked for you. That classy bar?
Bemelman.
Wine?
Okay. 45 too.
You get terrific sunsets here?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I mean, in the summer when the sun was in the north, we could see it, but not anymore. But the corners are pretty.
Oh, it's the time of year for it, and you're up high, so you get to see it.